The warm glow of amber light poured over white linen tablecloths. Violin music floated gently through the air, blending with soft clinking of cutlery and quiet laughter. Couples leaned in toward each other in intimate conversation. The restaurant, a high-end Italian place nestled in the city's uptown district, buzzed with elegance and comfort. Amani sat alone at a table near the window, her fingers lightly folded in her lap. She wore a delicate floral dress, pale blue with soft pink petals blooming across the fabric. Her natural hair was styled in elegant twists, makeup subtle but carefully done. She sat upright in her electric wheelchair, posture perfect, shoulders slightly tense. Her brown eyes darted occasionally toward the entrance, then down at the table. This was supposed to be a blind date arranged by her aunt. "A birthday surprise," she had said with a wink. "It's time you stop hiding and let someone see you," she'd added, shoving the dress into Amani's hands that morning. "I know people," her aunt had said. "Good ones. Just smile." Amani had smiled, mostly for herself. Hope was a fragile thing. But tonight, it flickered. Then came the sound of polished shoes on tile. Too many steps, too loud. A group of young black men in designer jackets and casual smirks approached her table. One with slicked back hair pulled out the chair across from her and sat down without asking. The others flanked him, standing casually like an audience waiting for a performance. "Are you Amani?" the one sitting asked with mock enthusiasm. "Wow, you're even prettier than the pictures." She blinked, unsure, then nodded. "Yes, I'm Amani." "Oh, good." Another chimed in, waving toward the bar. "We were worried you wouldn't show." Before she could respond, a server approached with a small birthday cake, strawberries and cream, a single candle flickering at the center. "Compliments of your date," the server said, confused but obedient. The young men clapped and cheered exaggeratedly. "Happy birthday, Amani," one of them shouted, "to the most special girl we've ever met." Then it happened. One of them leaned forward and with 2 fingers scooped a chunk of the whipped cream from the top of the cake and smeared it across her cheek. Another followed, dabbing a spot onto her forehead. Laughter erupted around her. The cake slipped, tipping into her lap, frosting and crumbs scattering across the fabric of her dress. Phones were out, recording, snapping. Someone sang "Happy Birthday" in a high-pitched, mocking tone. The others joined in. One of the boys called out, "A cripple looking for love. Now that's comedy gold." Their laughter exploded, high and cruel. Amani sat frozen. The cream stuck to her dark skin, the cake now a mess on her knees. Her hands trembled on the arms of her wheelchair. She looked from face to face, searching for someone, anyone, who wasn't laughing. No one came. At nearby tables, diners had turned to look. A few whispered. Some lowered their gazes. No one moved. No one intervened. Her face turned red, a burning mix of humiliation and shock. Tears welled in her eyes, then spilled silently, falling onto the cake that was supposed to be hers. She lowered her head, her hands tightened on the armrests of her chair, knuckles white. Then came a child's voice, clear and piercing in the sudden quiet that followed the cruel song. "Daddy, why is that lady crying while everyone's laughing?" The group paused. Their laughter faltered. At a table not far from Amani's, a little black girl with beautiful cornrows and wide eyes sat, fork in hand, untouched spaghetti before her. She looked directly at Amani, concern clouding her innocent face. Her father turned to look. Malik. He was in his early 30s, dressed in a sharp but simple blazer, open-collared shirt. His dark skin gleamed under the restaurant lights. He had the calm presence of someone who had seen both wealth and loss. His gaze followed his daughter's, and when his eyes landed on Amani, on her tear-streaked face, her frosting-stained dress, her trembling form, his expression shifted. He stood without a word. The room held its breath. The young men stiffened as he approached, suddenly unsure. Malik walked past them without so much as a glance, straight to Amani's side. Without asking, he pulled out the chair beside her, sat down, and gently reached for her hand. She looked up, startled. His voice was steady, low, and unshakable. "She's with me." Dead silence. The young men blinked, confused. Then slowly, realization and fear settled in as they noticed the way people looked at Malik. Recognition, respect, power. One of them muttered something under his breath. The others backed away, embarrassed and uneasy. Within seconds, they dispersed. Malik didn't look at them. He kept holding Amani's hand. His thumb brushed gently across her knuckles, just enough to let her know she was no longer alone. And for the first time that night, Amani looked around and saw stillness. No laughter, no whispers, only silence and a hand holding hers. Malik had not planned to stand up that night. He had told himself this dinner was for Zara, for the memory of someone they both loved but rarely spoke of. He came to this restaurant every year on this date without fail. Not because he needed to remember, he never forgot, but because it was the last place his wife had smiled before fate stole her from him. 3 years ago, a drunk driver ran a red light and changed everything. The crash shattered more than bones. It broke promises. It broke a man who had thought he was strong. Malik Graves, CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the state, had once been known for his charisma, his charm, his confidence. Now those things were armor. What remained underneath was a quiet man with a haunted look in his eyes, and a daughter who asked too many questions he still could not answer. Was Mommy pretty like me? Did she laugh like that? Why don't you talk about her? He never knew what to say. How do you explain to a child that some grief never lessens? It only hides. Zara was the only reason he had not collapsed entirely. She had pulled him out of bed when the world made no sense. She had handed him crayon drawings and warm hugs like lifelines. She was, and would always be, his reason. Tonight, she had seen something he had not. A girl crying while others laughed. A girl with frosting on her cheeks and pain in her eyes. And when Malik had looked into that girl's face, something inside him stirred. Amani. He did not know her name then, but her expression, wounded, burning with shame, yet somehow still dignified, was painfully familiar. That mixture of raw humiliation and pride, clinging desperately to composure. It was the same expression his wife had the day the doctors told her she would not survive the internal bleeding. He saw the same fire in Amani's eyes. But where Malik had once been surrounded by support, Amani looked abandoned, alone. He had recognized the silence around her, not just in the room, but in her life. The kind of silence that comes from being left behind too many times. What he could not have known yet was that Amani's story was too close to his own. Just over a year ago, Amani had been a final-year design student, bright, ambitious, full of sketches and dreams. She had landed an internship at a prestigious interior firm and was on her way to her first client meeting when a drunk driver veered off the road and into her path. The collision left her paralyzed from the waist down. Her parents, already strained and emotionally distant, could not handle the burden. Her father left. Her mother grew cold. Within 6 months, Amani was living with her maternal aunt in a cramped 2-bedroom house. Her aunt did not hide her disdain. "You should be grateful anyone looks at you at all," she would say. Amani had grown quieter, withdrawn, but she still drew in her sketchbook every night. She still imagined colors and spaces and warmth. And somewhere deep beneath the pain, she still hoped someone would see her. Not the chair, not the scars, but her. That night at the restaurant, as Malik looked into her eyes and gently took her hand, he saw more than sadness. He saw strength. He saw someone who had been hurt and still showed up, still tried. That quiet, trembling pride. It was the same flame he had once fallen in love with. He did not know her name, but he would not forget her eyes. Amani did not know what to expect next. Her breath still trembled, the remnants of laughter and frosting lingering in the air like smoke after a fire. She sat frozen, afraid to look up, unsure whether to flee or disappear entirely. Then came the softness of linen. Malik leaned in gently, pulled a handkerchief from the inside pocket of his blazer, and without saying a word, dabbed at the smear of frosting still clinging to her cheek. He moved slowly, his touch cautious, like one might approach a wild bird, careful not to startle or overstep. Amani flinched slightly, her eyes wide. "I can do it," she said quickly, voice tight but not cold. He nodded silently, handing her the cloth. She took it with both hands. It was monogrammed, clean, soft. She pressed it to her face, wiping away the stickiness with deliberate care. Then she moved to her hands and finally began brushing the bits of crushed cake from her lap. Her fingers worked quickly, trying to erase the humiliation, as if the right number of wipes could make the last 15 minutes vanish. Malik remained standing for a moment, then pulled out the chair opposite her and sat. She glanced up at him, confused. "You don't have to stay," she murmured. "I know," he said simply. There was a silence, not awkward, but weighted. He poured her a glass of water from the bottle at the center of the table, then refilled his own. "I'm Malik," he said after a beat. "And that little girl over there?" He nodded toward the booth a few tables away. "Is Zara. She insisted on spaghetti tonight. She always wins." Amani managed a small smile. "I'm Amani." "Nice to meet you, Amani." She looked down at her lap. The ruined dress, now stained with frosting, clung damply to her knees. She smoothed it absently. "You like Italian?" he asked. "I do," she said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "My mom used to make lasagna every Friday night." Malik smiled. "Then I take it you're not one of those people who skip the breadbasket." Amani chuckled just a little. He called the waiter over and ordered 2 plates of penne arrabbiata and a side of garlic bread. "Something simple," he said. "No more surprises." Amani nodded, feeling the first flicker of warmth return to her chest. The waiter paused before walking away and asked, "Anything else for the lady, sir?" Malik turned to Amani, then smiled kindly at the server. "Yes, a small birthday cake, please. Nothing fancy, just something sweet. Today's her birthday." Amani's eyes widened slightly, her lips parting. The server blinked, clearly surprised. "Right away, sir." Amani stared at Malik. "You didn't have to do that." He tilted his head. "No one has to be kind, but sometimes it's all that's needed." Around them, the atmosphere had shifted. A few nearby tables had taken notice. The couple next to them had paused mid-sentence. The waiter who had delivered the original cake glanced over from the bar, brows raised. Malik leaned forward, resting his arms casually on the table. "You know," he said gently, "it only takes one person to see you the right way, and suddenly the whole world goes quiet." Amani's breath caught. It was not just what he said, but how he said it. as if he meant it for her and only her. As if he had seen through the frosting, through the chair, through the silence, and still chosen to stay. A moment later, tiny footsteps pattered across the tiled floor. Zara appeared at Amani's side, clutching a napkin in her small hand. She looked up at her father for permission, then turned to Amani with a shy smile. "You're so pretty," she whispered, "like Mommy." Amani's heart cracked. The napkin in her lap was damp now, but not from the water glass. Her hand trembled as she reached for Zara's, her voice just above a whisper. "Thank you." Tears welled again, but this time they were different. They were not born of shame. They were the first tears Amani had cried in years that came from a place of being seen. The city streets were quieter now. Most of the dinner rush had passed, and the soft amber glow of the street lamps bathed the sidewalk in a sleepy kind of warmth. Amani wheeled herself slowly away from the restaurant, careful not to make eye contact with anyone passing by. Malik had offered to call a car. She had declined. "I'll take the bus," she had said politely, her voice too steady to argue with. Now she sat alone at the corner of the block, her back straight, hands folded in her lap. The scent of frosting still lingered faintly on her skin, and the cool night air made the remnants of dried cream on her dress feel stiff and tacky. She held something in her lap, a neatly folded handkerchief. His handkerchief. It was warm from her hands, her fingers curling around it like it was the only thing tethering her to the moment they had just shared. Behind her, soft footsteps approached, then stopped a few paces away. Malik did not speak. He stood quietly, giving her space, letting her breathe. After a long moment, she finally said, her voice quiet, almost to herself, "Tonight was really nice. Maybe the nicest birthday I've ever had." She didn't turn around. "I think it's the first time in years someone treated me like I was just normal," she added, a wry chuckle in her voice. "Like a woman, not a pity case." Malik stepped forward, but only to crouch slowly beside her, lowering himself until his eyes were level with hers. "You are a woman," he said gently, "and you are anything but ordinary." Amani turned her head toward him, her eyes shining in the low light, then quickly looked away. "You're very kind," she murmured. "Too kind, but you don't have to do all this." "All what?" "This," she gestured vaguely. "Being nice, staying, making speeches, giving me cake." Her voice trembled slightly now, even as she tried to smile. "I've had people come close before, try to play hero. But when things got too real, when I couldn't be the version of me they wanted, they left." Malik didn't respond right away. Amani's eyes dropped to the handkerchief in her lap, her thumbs pressed into the fabric. "I believed someone once," she said softly. "I thought maybe I was still lovable. But then he told me he couldn't see a future with a girl in a chair." She took a breath that hitched halfway through. "So I stopped letting people in. It's easier that way." The silence that followed was neither awkward nor empty. It was full, honest. Then, without a word, Malik reached into the inside pocket of his blazer and pulled out a business card. He didn't hand it to her right away. Instead, he placed it gently on her palm and closed her fingers over it. "I'm not here to rescue you, Amani," he said quietly. "I've already failed to save someone I loved." Her eyes lifted slowly to meet his. "My wife died in a car accident 3 years ago. Drunk driver. I held her hand and begged her to stay, and still I lost her. I know what it feels like to be completely helpless." He exhaled through his nose, eyes steady. "I'm not here to be a hero. I'm just a father trying to raise a little girl who still believes people are good. And last night she told me that she saw me smile for the first time in months. Amani blinked, her eyes now shimmering. She was talking about you, he added. A pause, and then slowly, Amani gave the faintest nod. Her fingers curled around the card in her hand. The bus rounded the corner a moment later, headlights glowing in the dark. Amani turned her chair slightly, preparing to board. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't have to. Malik remained where he was, standing now, watching her go, not with disappointment, but with quiet faith. A soft smile touched his lips. He was willing to wait. The bookstore was quiet that afternoon, its usual hum of soft jazz and shuffling pages, broken only by the occasional ding of the entrance bell. The place smelled of old paper, polished wood, and fresh coffee from the cafe counter tucked in the back. Amani sat behind the register, a novel in her lap she had barely touched for the last 10 minutes. Her thoughts kept drifting to that night, to that man, and to the silence that had followed. She had not called. She still wasn't sure why. The memory of his hand, warm and steady around hers, came back with stubborn regularity. So did the sound of his daughter's voice, soft, sincere. "You're so pretty, like Mommy." The door chimed. Amani looked up automatically, then froze. There, in a yellow sundress and pink sneakers, stood the little girl from the restaurant, Zara. She looked around for a second, then spotted Amani and walked straight to the counter, her tiny fists clenched around something. Amani blinked, stunned. "Zara?" The girl nodded, climbing onto the stool beside the register like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Daddy's at the coffee shop next door," she said matter-of-factly. "I told him I wanted to find a book." Amani opened her mouth, then closed it again. Zara extended her hands. Resting in her small palms was a silver wristwatch. Simple, old-fashioned, its face scratched, the leather strap slightly worn. "I want you to have this," she said. Amani hesitated. "Zara, I can't." "It was Mommy's," Zara interrupted. "Daddy gave it to her when they first met. She wore it every day." Amani's breath caught. "The day Mommy—" Zara's voice trailed off, but she recovered quickly. "The day she left, the watch stopped ticking. Daddy never fixed it." Her eyes searched Amani's, but he kept it, always, even though it made him sad. Amani reached out slowly, her fingers brushing the worn leather band. Zara gently pressed it into her hand. "Now it's yours," she said, "because Daddy smiled again yesterday." The weight of the watch in Amani's palm felt heavier than gold. She stared at it, unmoving, until her vision blurred. "I used to have one just like this," she whispered. "It was my favorite. I wore it the day I got hurt." Her voice broke. She did not finish the sentence. The watch's face gleamed faintly in the sunlight, streaming through the window. Amani turned it over, ran her thumb across the back. The initials were faint, but still visible. MG engraved with care. Her chest tightened. Later that night, after closing, she went home and pulled out the folder she had buried deep in a drawer, the one with her hospital records, insurance denials, and unpaid invoices. She hadn't looked at it in months. She flipped through page after page until she found it, a stamped receipt from the rehabilitation center where she had been transferred 6 weeks after the accident. The words, "Anonymous donor, payment received," were typed in the margin. Below it, barely legible, a thank you letter her mother had written on her behalf. Amani's hands trembled as she unfolded the page. At the bottom, a signature, bold, confident, slightly slanted to the right. Malik Graves. The same handwriting, the same name printed on the business card, still tucked inside her wallet. She stared at it for a long moment, her throat tight, heart pounding. Her fingers closed slowly around the letter. He had helped her. Before he knew her. Before he held her hand. Before she ever saw the softness in his eyes or the strength in his silence. And he never once told her. A tear slipped down her cheek, followed by another, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming ache of being seen. Long before she even knew she deserved it. The bell above the bookstore door clanged louder than usual, sharp and impatient. Amani looked up from behind the counter, startled. Her heart dropped when she saw who it was. Aunt Denise stormed in, her perfume thick, her heels clacking angrily against the floorboards. Her expression was tight, her eyes scanning the quiet shop until they landed on Amani like daggers. "There you are," she spat, her voice carrying across the small space. "Playing shopkeeper again, are you?" Several customers turned their heads. Amani's pulse quickened. "Aunt Denise, please not here." But the older woman had no intention of keeping her voice down. "I should have known you'd be hiding here, pretending to be busy," she snapped. "Tell me, how's that rich boyfriend of yours? What's his name again? The CEO? The one who took pity on you?" Amani's face flushed. "Please stop." Denise smirked loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, don't act innocent. I heard about him. You can't even hold on to a man who looks at you out of charity. Did he finally realize you're nothing but dead weight?" A murmur rippled through the customers. A barista behind the counter froze mid-pour. Amani tried to keep her composure. "You're making a scene. Please leave." Denise crossed her arms. "A scene? You think I care? I've wasted years on you. I'm the one paying for your fancy electric chair. You'd still be crawling if it weren't for me. You owe me, Amani. You owe me for everything." Amani's lips trembled. "That's not fair." Denise stepped closer, lowering her face until their eyes met. "Fair," she hissed. "Fair is me letting you live in my house instead of sending you to a care home. You should thank me every single day." Amani's breath hitched. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but the words stuck. She felt every eye in the room pressing down on her, pitying, uncomfortable, silent. Her fingers tightened on the counter. "Aunt Denise, please go home." "Don't tell me what to do," Denise barked. "You've never done a thing for yourself. You can't even—" A calm, steady voice interrupted her. "She can." The bookstore fell silent. Malik stepped out from behind the tall shelves near the back, his frame cutting sharply against the rows of books. He had been there for several minutes, quietly observing, jaw tight, fists barely unclenched. Now his eyes were fixed on Denise with quiet, lethal calm. "Excuse me?" Denise demanded, spinning toward him. "And who are you?" "I'm someone who's heard enough," Malik replied. His tone was low, but carried like thunder. "And someone who's tired of watching good people be punished for surviving." Denise blinked, thrown off by the authority in his voice. He walked forward, slow, measured. "You didn't buy her anything. You bought leverage. You kept her small so you could feel big. But that ends now." Denise's mouth opened, but Malik kept talking, his words deliberate and sharp. "She doesn't owe you. Not for the chair, not for the roof over her head, not for your cruelty dressed as kindness." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a folded paper, and laid it neatly on the counter between them. "That's a receipt. Every remaining payment for this wheelchair is settled, paid in full by me." Gasps filled the shop. Denise's face drained of color. Malik turned to Amani then, and his voice softened. not with pity, but with deep certainty. "You deserve to stand tall," he said, "not because your legs will one day let you, but because you don't have to bow to anyone again." Amani's eyes filled instantly. Her throat closed. She couldn't speak, only nod faintly, the tears spilling anyway. Denise took a step back, her mouth twitching as if to argue, but the weight of the moment pressed her silent. She turned, muttering under her breath, and pushed out the door, the bell jingling harshly in her wake. And then a tiny voice broke the hush. "Mommy." Everyone turned. Zara stood near the children's book aisle, clutching a drawing in one hand. She ran to Amani and wrapped her small arms around her waist. "Mommy," she repeated softly, tilting her face upward. "Can we go home now?" Amani froze, then cradled the child close, her heart swelling painfully. Malik exhaled, blinking back the sting behind his eyes. He placed a steady hand on Amani's shoulder, his voice barely above a whisper. "You're not alone anymore," he said. And for the first time in her life, Amani believed him. The sunlight filtered softly through the tall windows of the rehabilitation center. White walls, quiet halls, and the faint echo of wheels and footsteps created a calm, clinical atmosphere. But to Amani, it felt like walking into a place built on broken dreams and impossible hopes. Malik had gently guided her in on the first day, his hand steady on the back of her wheelchair. "You don't have to do this," she had whispered. "You don't have to be afraid of trying," he had replied. She had said nothing, but the doubt in her eyes had been louder than words. The first few sessions were agonizing. Her legs refused to listen. Her body, once so familiar, had become something distant, foreign. She fell into silence often, but every day, like clockwork, Zara would arrive. Little footsteps skipping into the room, hands full of drawings. The pictures were always the same. Stick figures holding hands, one tall, one small. The smaller one always said, "I'll wait for you to walk with me." Amani kept them all, taped them on the wall by her bed. Each note from Zara felt like a hand reaching into her fear and pulling her forward. One morning, the air was unusually still. Amani was halfway through a balancing exercise with the physical therapist when she heard a thud behind her. Zara had tripped on the edge of the mat. She landed with a small cry, her drawing slipping from her fingers. "Zara!" Amani shouted instinctively. The room spun. She didn't think. She reacted. Her hands gripped the support bars, her arms strained, muscles long dormant lit up with fire. And then she stood. Her knees wobbled, every nerve screamed, but she stood. And slowly, trembling, dragging but determined, she took one step, then another toward Zara. Gasps echoed around her. A nurse clapped her hands over her mouth. The therapist froze mid-step. Zara's eyes widened, glistening with tears, not from pain, but awe. "Mommy!" Amani collapsed to her knees beside the little girl, pulling her into her arms. "I'm okay," Zara said quickly. "I didn't cry." But Amani did, silently against Zara's hair. Malik knelt nearby, speechless. His voice, when it came, cracked like something soft and reverent. "You did it. I knew you could," Zara whispered. "You just needed someone who believed in you first." Amani looked up at him, and for the first time, her tears weren't from grief, fear, or loss. They were from belief in herself, in love, in tomorrow. The ballroom shimmered under a canopy of soft golden lights. Tables dressed in ivory linen surrounded the polished stage where a large banner read, "Together we rise, a gala for road victims and recovery." Malik stood near the back of the room, greeting guests with quiet confidence, his black tux tailored to precision. But every few seconds, his eyes flicked toward the entrance, waiting. And then she came. Gasps fluttered through the room as Amani stepped in, slow but steady. One hand clasped in Zara's, her white dress flowed around her like light itself. Her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo adorned with small pearls. The crowd murmured, recognizing her. That's the girl from the accident last year. She couldn't walk. And now look at her. Zara beamed, her tiny steps in sync with Amani's. The little girl tugged gently, leading her across the ballroom. Malik's face softened the moment he saw them. His smile was no longer just one of love, but of pride, of awe. When the MC took the stage and called Amani's name, she hesitated, but Zara didn't. The child ran forward, grabbed the microphone, and dragged it down to her height. Her voice echoed bright and bold. "This is my new mommy." The room fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. Amani brought her hands to her face, overwhelmed. She hadn't expected this. Not the lights, not the attention, and certainly not what came next. Malik walked onto the stage, calm and sure, stopping in front of her. In his hands was a small velvet box. "Amani," he began, his voice carrying over the hushed crowd. "There was a time when I thought my life had stopped, when every clock, every reason to move forward just froze." He opened the box. Inside, nestled in satin, was the same old watch Zara had once brought to Amani, now fully restored. The hands pointed to a precise time. "The moment we met was when time began again for me." Tears streamed down Amani's cheeks. Malik went down on one knee, pulling a delicate ring from the side compartment of the box. "You brought me back. You made me believe again. So today, in front of everyone who's seen us fall, I ask you, will you rise with me forever?" Amani nodded. She couldn't find her voice, but her tears, her smile, her trembling yes said it all. The room rose in a standing ovation, and as Malik slipped the ring on her finger, Zara wrapped her arms around both of them, squealing, "We're a family now." In the center of a night built on loss and hope, pain and healing, they stood together. A new beginning, a new time, a new home. If this story touched your heart, you're not alone. Amani, Malik, and little Zara remind us that love can bloom in the most unexpected places, and that kindness has the power to rewrite even the most broken stories. If you believe in second chances, healing, and the beauty of unlikely families, make sure to subscribe to TribeAfriTales for more heartfelt journeys just like this. Don't forget to like, comment your favorite moment, and share this video to spread love and hope. Because sometimes, one act of kindness is all it takes to change a life.